So this is the intro, where we have a much heavier guitar tone than the chorus. And what I used for that was this, the Oracle from ML Sound Labs. When mixing this song, I realized I needed two different guitar tones, one for the verse and one for the chorus. I couldn't use the tone I initially chose for the choruses and big parts of the song. So let's take a look at why I had to use two different tones, and hopefully this can be something that you think about with your next recording. If you make similar music to this and want to learn how to make it sound competitive with your favorite bands, then hopefully this video mixing series can help. So let's go through the tone. This is our DI. And first of all, I ran that through the Shep 73 from Waves. This is just to emulate hardware preamp. So I'm actually not touching any of the settings inside the plugin. I'm just running it through it for a very subtle saturation on the DI itself, like you would if you were recording at a big studio. Then we run that into the amp. Go to the pedal board section. We have the noise gate on. The drive is actually turned off. Sometimes I put this drive on to clear up the low mids, but with this on and the palm muting bits, I just felt like it was killing the girth of the tone. So that's not actually on for this one. And you can see I've ranked up the mids. This plugin has really good mids. And if I want the guitars to really be brought forward in a mix, I will push these mids up and then with EQ sort of shape that later on. Bass whacked up full as well. A bit more gain than I usually do. Now, like I said earlier, I then carve out some mids. We've booted the mids in the amp sim, and I just want to, and these cuts here, just refine that and pulled out some harshness, rolled off some of the low end that the bass is going to occupy, and rolled off the top end also. So I'll show you what these cuts are doing. Hopefully you can hear it didn't drastically change the tone too much. It just cleaned it up. Got rid of the sort of stuff I don't need from the tone and just left me with what I wanted from it. Let's go through each one of these cuts so you can hear them individually. Those two mid cuts there are just like wind down a hallway. Turn those two off and on. Hopefully you can hear how that sort of windy sound disappeared, and then that helps with the clarity of the tone and allows you to push those mids without it sounding boxy and flat. And then there's this low mid cut here at 350. Again, cleaning up some of that mud so I can get some low end in the palm muting without it sounding muddy, and then some harshness too. And then from that into this plugin, the Mag EQ4, which I use for brightness. As you can see, I've gone quite heavy here on the 20k air band. With this plugin, it's amazing because you can set the shelf to be super high, like 20 or 40k, and then just turn that air knob until it starts to sound like it's giving it some air. So I'll start with this off and you can hear what it does. Really brings it forward and right in your face. I love this plugin for air and presence. Next up, we have Soothe. That's that harshness. It's literally only really focusing on that sort of 4 to 5k area. Let me show you what it's doing. You can hear how it's also working across the full frequency spectrum, pulling out some of those bits that sort of jump out and stop it from being even. That's why Soothe is such an amazing plugin. It is expensive. You know, you could achieve the same thing with dynamic EQ. You just have to work a bit harder to get it. And then finally, some post-saturation with Saturn 2 from FabFilter. Another expensive plugin. Again, you could just use any saturation. So what I've done here is I've only lightly touched the top end, and then it's everything else, which is up to sort of 26%. And that's just like a flavor to give it sort of like an analog quality to it that you wouldn't normally get when working in the box. Okay, so I initially used the same tone for the chorus, but I ran into a problem, and it was the level of gain that I had. Where this is single string stuff, you know, more gain sounds great. But when I got to the chorus, this was my initial tone. It sounds good by itself. It's very gainy, but I really wanted that kind of quality to it. However, then later on down the line, when you're adding in all the other bits of distortion that come with mixing and mastering, it was just so overly distorted. It was difficult to get the vocals to come out. And it always surprises me, and I think it's something that you should bear in mind, is that your guitars are probably louder than they need to be. Especially if you're like me and you're a guitarist at heart. Your guitars are probably too loud. Turn them down as much as you can if you're struggling to get clarity from the vocals and if the mastering chain is starting to overly distort everything. So how did I get a tone that worked with less gain and still have impact at that part of the song? Well, this is the tone I used whenever it was a full chord. So Archetype Nolly, if you've seen my other videos, you'll know I love this plugin. Let's look at it deeply. Pedal board, this is what I usually do. What I was talking about earlier with the ML Soundlabs plugin that I hadn't actually engaged is run the Tube Screamer or a similar kind of pedal, have the drive pretty much off, a little bit brightness out of the tone, and that just cleans up the low mids before it runs into the amp, which is what you would have done typically, back in the days when everyone used real amps, like a 5150 or something like that. So many engineers would run it through a Tube Screamer before it hit the amp, with the drive pretty much off. Okay, so this is the sort of like crunch amp from the Archetype Nolly plugin. Gain is at 6, same as the ML Soundlabs one, but it's way less gain in this plugin because it's not modeled on something as distorted. Brightness is turned on, bass whacked up, mids pushed again because I wanted the guitars to be mid forward. Slightly push the treble and presence, but not that much. I like to do my brightness with an EQ afterwards. Nothing else is really touched. So let's listen to this tone so you can see the difference in gain from the intro. Now you can hear how much more definition that has. And it always surprises me how, full chord chorus parts like this, in this kind of genre, like emo pop punk, I dial the gain back more and more every time. And I just prefer that sort of like slinky, defined chord where you can hear the note really well and it doesn't eat up the vocals. Compare that to the original tone that we had, this one. You can just hear how like distorted and broken up that tone sounds. And by itself, it sounds great. And you definitely, when writing the song, get more inspiration out of a tone that sounded like that. But this one was just what the mix needed. So there's quite a contrast. And there's still gain in that tone. Nothing was lost from that chorus by bringing that gain back. It was just more clarity and the vocals were not fighting for attention anymore. So hopefully you can give that a try in your next song, see if it works for you. Now, as I'll be going through this song in this video series, how it was mixed with the vocals, guitars, bass and drums, there is a cool bit of the chorus with sort of like a lead riff where the rhythm tone disappears. Let me show you those tones. Like a dual lead bit. So we have, again, the DI running into the Shep 73, not touching it, just using the saturation. And then into the Nolly plugin, but this time using the 5150. So a lot more distorted for these leads. Again, single note part, running it through the Tube Screamer before the amp. And then you'll notice here that I've actually switched off the cab part of it and I'm running it through GGD. So we'll look at that in a second. Nothing else happening before the cab. And then, as you can see, I've gone through pretty much every single cab they have in this plugin to shoot them all out. And ended up picking the 57 on the up front cab and pushed it slightly into the brightness, but nothing more. The next video in this series will be on how to mix rock and emo style vocals, where we'll go through the entire vocal mix. If this video was valuable in some way, then please subscribe so you can catch each video as I upload them. And be sure to check out my other videos for help with emo, pop punk and similar stuff. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.